Hey everyone, and welcome back to my second video in preventing dementia. Now you might wonder why I'm out in what looks like the middle of nowhere, but it's actually about 5 minutes from my house and it's great. I've got my water bottle with me, and thanks so much to the new subscribers. I hope you're enjoying the journey. Let's get preventing dementia. So the idea with preventing dementia is that we have a look at all the different factors that go to increasing our risk of getting it. Now, we can't cure it, and we can't absolutely say that if you do A, B, C and X, Y, Z that you're not going to get it. But what we do know is that there are certain things that increase the number of people who have dementia if they do those things. So today we're going to look at diabetes, we're going to look at midlife obesity and physical inactivity. So what's diabetes? Diabetes, everyone's heard of it. Everyone knows someone who's got diabetes. So it's basically where the body no longer is capable of using the sugar that goes into it. So we've got simple and complex sugars. So our simple sugars we all know is what we add into our coffee, what goes into making cake, all of those sorts of things. And then we've got complex sugars. And complex sugars are your starches and your carbohydrates. They take a longer time to break down. So when the body breaks these things down, the bloodstream fills with sugar. And the sugar doesn't automatically go into the cells. The only way the sugar can go into the cells is with insulin. And the body goes, we've got extra sugar in our system. We have to produce some insulin. And then the insulin and the sugar go hand in hand. And it's the insulin that knocks on the door of the cell and says, hey, we're here, let us in. And then the cell opens the door and says, thank you very much, I can use all that sugar and I can do what I'm supposed to do. So whether that's a brain cell or a muscle cell or a skin cell, the sugar is what makes it work. So if we don't have any insulin, that's type 1 diabetes, and that comes from the pancreas. And if the pancreas isn't working, sometimes there's been an accident or an illness and the pancreas has stopped working. And so there's no insulin. So the sugar goes running around in the bloodstream, but nobody's knocking on the doors of the cells because there's no insulin. And so the cell doesn't know to open the door, and so it can't get the sugar into it. So then we have to take artificial insulin. That's type 1 diabetes. Now, if we have a lot of sugar and we have it for a long period of time, the cells get sick and tired of being flooded by all this sugar, and they start refusing to open the door even if there's insulin there. So the body goes, well, I don't need to produce any insulin because no one's opening the doors. So then the pancreas starts to suffer. And so that's type 2 diabetes, where the cells refuse to open the door to the sugars. So we can take a tablet and that will encourage the body or the cells to open the door. But what we can actually do is lose weight. We can eat a reasonable diet. You know, it's not to say don't have a piece of cake every now and again. Goodness gracious me, look at me. But if we eat the right diet, and if we get active, and if we exercise, we can actually increase the body's ability to reopen those doors. So what has this got to do with dementia? What does diabetes have to do with dementia? Well, 30% of all the sugar, all the energy that you take into your body goes to your brain. And if your body can't... Sorry, just putting my water bottle down. So if your body can't get the sugar into each of the cells, and 30% of that sugar is going to your brain, then your brain isn't getting any of it either. And so the brain cells starve and then they die. And so high levels of blood sugars, where perhaps you didn't know you had diabetes or you're a bit dismissive of it because everything seems to be fine, is actually impacting your brain more than you know. And it takes a long time for dementia to start to present itself as, you know, poor memory or forgetting things, all of those sorts of things. But there's been maybe 10 years where your brain has been atrophying or shrinking. And if you can keep your diabetes under check, so regularly seeing the doctor, if you are overweight, and you know if you're overweight, you know, we don't need someone to tell us if we're overweight. You know, we know that you can have a chat to your doctor and say, look, I don't want to get diabetes. I don't want to get dementia. I want this body to last me as long as it can. And your doctor can either refer you to a dietitian or get you to keep a food diary. Try and work out, you know, whether there are things that you could change, perhaps even the timing of when you eat. You know, if you eat last thing before you go to bed, it just sits in your stomach like a rock. And that's no good for you. So, type 2 diabetes can largely be reversed. And we look at it and we think, oh my goodness, you know, we're an overweight nation. And it's not largely because we're eating poorly. Yes, we are eating poorly, but our lives have gone from having to be active, having to walk everywhere that we go. Now everyone's got a car. You know, as recently as 50 years ago, having a car was a luxury. You know, and a household might have one car. Now everybody in the household has a car. And so if we can choose to walk somewhere rather than take the car, then that's going to be better for our brain. And we might just reduce our risk of getting dementia. If you do have diabetes and your doctor's given you medication, make sure you're taking the medication when you're supposed to and the amount that you're supposed to. Keep a check of your blood sugars. Make sure that they're not going too high or too low. You know, follow the recommendations of your doctor. They've really got your best interests at heart. And if you can keep your diabetes in check, then you'll keep your dementia in check as well. So the other two things I wanted to look at was midlife obesity. And so as we get older, you know, as kids, you play sport, you run around with all the other kids, you're really keeping your cardiovascular health in check. And what they've discovered is what's good for the heart is actually good for the brain. And I imagine that's largely because when the heart pumps blood, the first place that it goes to is the brain. So if the heart can't do its job properly, then the brain's not getting everything that it needs when it needs. So with midlife obesity, they're finding if kids are overweight and they lose the weight later, it doesn't seem to matter. It doesn't seem to have any long-term impact, certainly not where dementia is concerned. But if you have midlife obesity, this is when your body starts to think, okay, I've done everything that it needs to do. I'm just going to start sitting back and chilling. So we sit back and chill. So our blood pressure starts to change when we're in our midlife, sort of between that 40 and 60 age group. And when our blood pressure changes, it either makes our heart go faster or slower, and it changes the amount of perfusion. So perfusion is the amount of oxygen that is getting to all the cells, the amount of nutrients that is getting to all the cells, the amount of sugar that is getting to all the cells. And so midlife obesity, on top of a changing blood pressure, is almost like a ticking time bomb. And so if we can actually become more active in our midlife than we were in our 20s and 30s, then we are giving our brain and our heart the best chances that they can get. So the last one is physical inactivity. And there was a study done, and they followed, I can't remember how many now, but it was quite a few people over a 2-year period. And they did MRI scans where they measured a part of the brain called the hippocampus. And the hippocampus is really vital to our memories. Now, as we get older, sort of beyond 60, every part of the brain starts to shrink, including the hippocampus. And so you might talk to grandma, and they're not as on point as they used to be. Well, that's just because our brain is aging along with the rest of our body. However, what they've discovered, and they split this study into the two groups. So there was a group that were physically active. So whether that was an exercise program, a walking group, something to keep you physically active. And then there was another group, and they were enrolled in yoga and stretching and whatnot. Still good for you. But what they found is that, and I'll put a picture of the actual graph. So you've got the size of the hippocampus in the people who did the yoga and the stretch. And over that 2-year period, it declined as if they weren't doing anything at all. Now, yoga and stretching is really good for your muscles, it's good for your mind, it's good for your spatial awareness, it's good for your balance. But it doesn't do anything for your memory. What they did find is that the group that was in the walking and the physical exercise programs, that there was still a decline in the size of the hippocampus, but probably only a third of what there was in the other group, or the groups that didn't engage in anything. So in terms of protecting your memory, the more physical activity that you can do, the longer you can do it, the better it is for your brain. So one of the reasons I'm out walking, and they look at cardiovascular health as being equal to brain health, is that if you want to go walking and you want to get the best benefit out of it, you have to walk to the point that you can't have a conversation. So that's why you're out with me, and every time I stop to do part of the video, I'm actually stopped. I'm not walking. And when I was walking through, I actually wanted to show you just how beautiful this part of the world is. And it's only 5 minutes from home. So you might even be able to find somewhere like this close to home where you don't have to drive the car, you don't have to, pay an entrance fee, you don't have to sign up to a membership or anything like that. And for people who've got injuries, now this was something, I wanted to get some of my house done this weekend, but in going to the physiotherapist, all right, let me backtrack. I had a car accident 20 odd years ago, and I smashed the middle part of my leg. And when they reset it, and I had a pole and pins and all the glorious things, that they've actually rotated my leg 15 degrees, and that's been giving me hip pain and back pain and all that sort of stuff. So where you see me do all of these things on the videos, like, you know, moving bags of concrete and whatnot, I pay for it. Trust me, I pay for it. So I thought, if I'm going to get back into all of this physical activity because I don't want dementia, then I have to get my leg right. I have to get my hip right. I have to get into exercise that is going to be good for me and not leave me laid up in bed for 24 or 48 hours after I've done the exercise. So I thought, I'll do Pilates. That's really good for you. Only to find that the Pilates centre was coupled with a physiotherapist. And so I've seen the physiotherapist and she said, I'm going to work on you, but I need you to take it easy. No lifting things, no running, no impact, walking. That's your activity for the next week. So she's pummeled around with my back and, you know, no pain, no gain, that sort of thing. And now I'm out walking, but I have to walk to the point where I can't hold a conversation. That's what builds your heart rate up. That's what gets your blood circulating. That's what gets everything going. Now, one of the things that I had a look at was what happens when you get good circulation in your brain. And what happens when you get your diabetes in check? What happens when you lose the weight and you become fitter? So insulin, the body's naturally created insulin, or if you've got type 1 diabetes or insulin dependent type 2 diabetes, there's kids in the background, I love it, that you actually have a thing called tau protein. And that needs to be circulated and moved out of your brain space. And if it's not moved out of your brain space, then it actually settles and forms plaques in your brain. And that's one of the things that they have associated so clearly for 20, 30 years with Alzheimer's disease. So if you can get your circulation going, get your diabetes in check, get your weight under control, you have a really good chance of reducing your risk of getting dementia in later life. So this has been a long video, and I'm going to keep going on my walk. I'm going to build my heart rate up. I'm not going to be able to talk, and then I'm going to go home and make myself a healthy lunch. So thank you again for the new subscribers. Hit the share button. I want as many people as possible to not even look down the barrel of dementia. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week in the next video.